forest was cloaked in the soft glow of a fading sunset, its towering trees casting long shadows over the dense underbrush. Ranger Elijah Miller moved swiftly but cautiously, his boots crunching against the dry leaves beneath him. His radio crackled with static, punctuated by the worried voice of his colleague, Carlos. "Miller, we've been searching for hours. If we don't find her before nightfall—" Elijah adjusted the strap of his flashlight, his face set in determination. "We'll find her," he replied firmly. His thoughts raced back to the missing child, a 2-year-old named Lily. She'd wandered off during a family camping trip earlier that morning, and despite the search team's best efforts, there'd been no sign of her. The stakes were high. The forest was known for its unpredictable terrain and, more ominously, its wildlife. Bears were a common sight, and while they typically avoided humans, a startled or hungry bear could be deadly. The thought sent a chill down Elijah's spine as he pressed deeper into the woods. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep orange and purple, a faint sound caught Elijah's attention. He froze, holding his breath. There it was again, a soft, high-pitched whimper. It was faint, almost swallowed by the rustling leaves and distant calls of birds settling in for the night. Heart pounding, he gestured to Carlos, who was a few paces behind. "You hear that?" Elijah whispered. Carlos nodded, his face etched with concern. "It's coming from up ahead." They moved quickly, but quietly, following the sound. The whimper grew louder, interspersed with strange, guttural noises. Elijah's mind raced. Could it be Lily? Or was it an animal? The duo emerged into a small clearing, and Elijah's breath caught in his throat. Passing a few yards away, partially obscured by the shadows of the trees, was a massive bear. Its thick fur glistened in the twilight, and its dark eyes seemed to gleam with a mix of curiosity and wariness. The bear was positioned near the entrance of a small cave, its body language tense. And then Elijah saw it, a tiny foot poking out from the shadows of the cave's entrance. "Lily," he murmured, his voice barely audible. His instincts screamed at him to act, but he knew one wrong move could provoke the bear. He held up a hand to stop Carlos, who had already reached for his tranquilizer rifle. "Wait," Elijah whispered. "We can't risk hurting the child." Carlos's grip on the rifle tightened, his knuckles turning white. "And we can't let that bear get any closer to her." Elijah's mind worked frantically, assessing the situation. The bear wasn't advancing. Instead, it seemed to be guarding the cave? The realization was both puzzling and unsettling. Bears didn't typically behave this way unless they were protecting their own cubs. But Lily wasn't a cub. Why would this bear care about a human child? "Stay here," Elijah said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I'm going to get closer." Carlos started to protest, but Elijah silenced him with a look. This was his call. He'd spent years working as a ranger, studying animal behavior and navigating dangerous situations. If anyone could get Lily out safely, it was him. Elijah took a cautious step forward, his hands raised to show he meant no harm. The bear's head snapped toward him, its massive frame tensing. A low growl rumbled from its chest, a sound that sent shivers down Elijah's spine. He stopped, maintaining eye contact but avoiding any sudden movements. "Easy, girl," he murmured, his voice soothing. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want the child." The bear's growl softened but didn't cease. Elijah took another step, his heart hammering in his chest. The whimper from the cave grew louder, more insistent. Lily was awake, and she was scared. Suddenly, the bear's posture shifted. It stood on its hind legs, towering over Elijah, and let out a deafening roar. Carlos shouted from behind, raising his rifle, but Elijah waved him off. He couldn't let this escalate. In that moment, Elijah noticed something strange. The bear wasn't lunging or advancing. Its roar wasn't one of aggression, but warning. It was as if the bear was trying to protect something precious. Elijah's eyes darted to the cave entrance, where Lily's tiny foot remained motionless. His gut told him the bear wasn't the enemy here. Summoning every ounce of courage, Elijah crouched lightly, making himself appear smaller and less threatening. "It's okay," he said, his voice steady. "You're protecting her, aren't you?" The bear's roar faded into a low rumble, and for a brief moment their eyes locked. In that exchange, Elijah felt a spark of understanding. Just as the connection pervaded the both of them, the bear transcended words. The bear lowered itself back onto all fours, still blocking the cave, but no longer growling. Behind him, Carlos muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." Elijah ignored him, his focus unwavering. He knew he had a chance to save Lily, but it would require trust from both the bear and himself. Taking a deep breath, he inched closer, ready to risk everything to bring the child to safety. The forest felt alive, its every sound magnified in the dense silence surrounding the confrontation. Miller stood frozen, the towering bear mere feet away, its dark, intelligent eyes boring into him. The massive creature exuded a raw power that seemed to draw strength from the very ground beneath it. Miller could feel his own heart pounding in his chest, his breath caught in his throat as he calculated his next move. This wasn't just a wild animal defending territory. It was something more deliberate, more purposeful. The bear did not charge immediately, and that hesitation alone sent a ripple of unease through Miller. It wasn't afraid, nor was it uncertain. It was waiting, as though testing him. Its enormous claws scraped against the frozen earth, a subtle reminder of its unmatched strength. Despite its apparent aggression, something in its stance hinted at a deeper motive. The realization struck Miller like a bolt of lightning. The bear wasn't guarding for the sake of protecting itself. It was shielding something behind it. As if to confirm his suspicion, a faint sound drifted from the cave's depths, a soft, almost imperceptible whimper. Miller's breath caught. His gaze shifted momentarily to the dark recess beyond the bear, and in that fleeting second he saw a glimmer of movement. Something, or someone, was inside. "Carlos," Miller murmured, his voice barely audible over the tense silence. His friend, standing a few paces behind him, shifted uneasily. The unspoken understanding between them was palpable. Carlos's hand hovered over his tranquilizer rifle, but Miller raised a hand to stop him. "Not yet," he whispered, his voice resolute. "It's not attacking." Carlos swallowed hard, his grip tightening on the rifle's stock. "It's still a bear, Miller. You can't trust it." But Miller's instincts screamed otherwise. This wasn't a mindless predator, it was a guardian, fierce and unwavering. Gathering his courage, Miller took a slow, cautious step forward. The bear growled low, the sound reverberating through the clearing like thunder. Miller froze again, his heart hammering against his ribs. The bear's gaze flicked toward Carlos, who had inadvertently shifted his weight, causing a twig to snap underfoot. The bear's growl deepened, its body tensing as it pivoted toward Carlos. Time seemed to stretch unbearably as the bear lunged, its massive form surging forward with terrifying speed. Carlos barely had time to react, scrambling backward until his back collided with a tree. The bear reared up on its hind legs, towering over him, claws slashing at the bark as Carlos hastily climbed higher. "Get out of there! Huh?" Miller shouted, panic lacing his voice. The bear's focus was now entirely on Carlos, giving Miller the opportunity he needed. Adrenaline surged through him as he darted toward the cave entrance, his boots skidding on the frost-laden ground. The entrance to the cave loomed ahead, dark and foreboding. Miller hesitated for a split second before plunging inside, the air growing colder and heavier as the light faded. Shadows danced on the jagged walls, and the faint whimper grew louder, guiding him deeper into the cavern. There, nestled in a bed of dried leaves and moss, was a small child. The boy couldn't have been more than 2 years old, his tiny frame bundled in what remained of a tattered jacket. His wide eyes, full of fear and innocence, locked onto Miller's. Relief and disbelief washed over Miller in equal measure. "It's okay, little one," he whispered, his voice trembling as he crouched down. The child flinched at first but then giggled softly, the sound so pure and unexpected that it brought a lump to Miller's throat. Reaching out, he gently touched the child's shoulder, only for the boy to suddenly cry out. The sound echoed through the cave, shattering the fragile silence. Miller froze, his heart sinking as the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps thundered toward him. The bear was returning. Desperation clawed at Miller's chest as he scooped up the child, holding him close. The boy's cries softened into muffled whimpers as Miller pressed himself against the cave wall, half hidden by the jagged shadows. The bear's massive silhouette filled the entrance, its breath visible in the frigid air. Its eyes, frantic and full of something Miller couldn't quite place, darted between him and the child. Miller held his breath, his pulse roaring in his ears as he braced for the inevitable attack. But the bear didn't charge. Instead, it lumbered toward the child, letting out a low, mournful hum. Miller's jaw slackened in shock as the bear nudged the boy gently with its snout, its enormous body radiating a tenderness that seemed utterly at odds with its ferocious appearance. Miller's mind raced, torn between his instinct to protect the child and the inexplicable bond playing out before him. This wasn't an enemy. This was a protector, one that had cared for the boy against all odds. The moment shattered as a sharp whistle pierced the air. The backup team had arrived. The bear's head whipped around, nostrils flaring as the scent of humans filled the cave. Its growl returned, this time laced with defiance. Tranquilizer darts flew through the air, embedding into the bear's thick flank. It roared in fury and despair, its massive body swaying as the sedative took hold. Miller watched, helpless, as the bear's legs buckled and it collapsed with a final, anguished exhale. The boy clung to Miller, his tiny fists gripping his shirt as the bear's mournful eyes lingered on the child one last time before closing. Miller's heart ached with the weight of the moment, knowing that this was no ordinary encounter. This was a story of survival, sacrifice, and a bond that defied understanding. As Miller slowly steps into the cave, his flashlight reveals the child huddled against the jagged rock walls. The boy, no older than 5, trembles but doesn't cry out. His eyes are wide with fear, yet there's a strange comfort in the air, a quiet sense of safety. The bear, still standing guard at the entrance, lets out a low growl, warning Miller not to approach. Miller knows this moment is delicate. He's faced wild animals before, but never one this protective, this resolute. But he can see the bond between the bear and the child. It's undeniable. The bear, despite its intimidating size, is watching over the boy like a mother would. Miller speaks softly, trying not to spook either of them. "Hey, it's okay. We're here to help. You're safe now." His words hang in the air, but the bear's gaze never wavers. There's a slight shift in its posture, a sign of readiness. As Miller gets closer, he notices something unexpected. The bear isn't just guarding the child, it's comforting him. With its large paw, it gently strokes the boy's head, a tender, almost protective gesture. The boy, in turn, seems to relax slightly, his whimpers subsiding. Miller's heart aches. This bear, this creature of strength, is more than just an animal. It's a protector, a mother in its own right. But there's no time to linger. Miller knows he needs to act fast. "Carlos, now!" he calls out to his partner, who's waiting just outside the cave. With a signal, Carlos fires a tranquilizer dart at the bear, the shot landing with a soft thud. The bear stumbles, but doesn't retreat. Miller watches, heart in his throat, as the bear's eyelids droop, and it finally collapses to the ground, unconscious. With the immediate danger past, Miller hurries to the child. He kneels beside him, gently lifting the boy into his arms. The child, still trembling but no longer crying, looks up at him with wide eyes. "Are you going to take me home?" he asks in a voice barely above a whisper. Miller's chest tightens. "I'm going to take you somewhere safe," he replies, cradling the child against his chest as he exits the cave. Outside, Carlos is already calling in the backup. Back at the facility, the bear is carefully placed in a large enclosure, still sedated. Miller stands nearby, watching as wildlife experts examine the animal. It's a stark contrast to the gentle, caring protector he witnessed in the cave. Now, the bear is restless, pacing in its confinement. Miller can see the sadness in its eyes, a sorrow that mirrors his own. The boy, now in a small cot nearby, watches the bear from the safety of the facility. His eyes are drawn to the animal, his expression a mix of confusion and longing. Miller notices the bond between them is still strong. The boy's fingers twitch slightly, as if reaching for something. Or someone. "What's his name?" Miller asks the child, his voice soft. The boy looks up at him with a lost expression. "I don't know," he says quietly. "I don't know who I am." Miller's heart breaks as he watches the boy's quiet struggle. The child doesn't remember his own name. He doesn't remember his family. The search for his identity had already begun, but the results, when they came back, were devastating. There were no living relatives, no parents to claim him. The boy was alone in the world, and the only connection he had left was to the bear. The DNA test results confirm the worst. The boy is alone, and there's no family to speak of. Yet, in this animal there's a connection, something primal and deep. It's clear now that the bear wasn't just guarding the boy for survival. It was guarding him out of love, a fierce and unspoken bond. Miller's thoughts turn inward. He knows what it's like to lose someone. His own child lost years ago, and the ache never goes away. He's never fully healed, not since the tragedy. But seeing the boy, seeing this connection with the bear, something stirs inside him. Maybe this is his second chance. A few days later, Miller finds himself sitting in his office, staring at the boy, who's now playing quietly with a toy truck. Miller looks down at the papers in front of him, the adoption forms, and feels a stirring of hope, something he hasn't felt in a long time. He could take the boy in. He could give him the life he deserves. He could be the father this child needs, a second chance to heal the wounds that time hasn't erased. His wife Eliza would be on board. She always had a heart full of love and compassion even after their own loss. Miller picks up the pen. He doesn't hesitate. He signs the forms, sealing a future for the boy and himself. The loss of his own child will never leave him, but he can still offer a future to this boy, a future filled with hope. As he walks down the hall to find Eliza, the weight of his decision feels like a heavy burden. But as he enters the kitchen and sees her preparing dinner, he knows he's made the right choice. He walks up behind her, wraps his arms around her, and tells her the news. Eliza turns in his arms, eyes wide with surprise. "You're sure?" Miller nods. "I'm sure. We'll give him the home he deserves." Weeks pass since the day the boy came into Miller's life. The bond between them deepens, and the pain of their pasts, though still present, starts to fade, replaced by the warmth of a growing family. But the bear, now recovered, still restless and yearning to return to the wild, has not left Miller's mind. The day arrives when the decision is made. The bear is strong again, its health restored after the tranquilizers wore off. But it's clear that captivity is not where it belongs. In a way, the bear's captivity mirrors the boy's own struggle. Both were lost, both found each other, but now they must part for the sake of healing. Miller arrives at the facility early that morning, his heart heavy but resolute. He is accompanied by a team of wildlife specialists ready to return the bear to its natural habitat. But this time, it's not just another animal being released. It's the bear that once saved a child, the bear that became a symbol of protection and love. The boy, now living with Miller and Eliza, stands by his side, his small hand gripping Miller's. "Will the bear be okay?" he asks, his voice small with worry. His eyes are wide, filled with the same uncertainty Miller feels in his chest. Miller kneels down beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. The bear will be okay. It belongs out there with its family. The tranquilizer shot that had brought the bear down now feels like a distant memory as the bear stands before them, strong and ready. Miller steps forward, slowly, his footsteps deliberate. The bear eyes him closely, but there's no aggression, no threat. Only mutual understanding. The wildlife team opens the cage, and for a moment, everything is still. Miller holds his breath, unsure of what will happen next. Then, as if sensing its freedom, the bear takes a step forward. Another step. Its eyes meet Miller's one last time, as if acknowledging the man who had once stood between it and the child it had cared for. The bear lets out a low growl, soft, almost mournful, and then turns, lumbering into the forest. Its powerful form disappears into the trees, and for a moment it feels as if time has stopped. The bond between human and animal is unspoken, but it lingers in the air, heavy and profound. Miller watches as the bear disappears, the child still holding his hand tightly. There's a sense of finality in the air, a moment of closure. The bear is free, and so is the boy. Miller knows in his heart that this was the right thing to do. It's time for the bear to return to its world, just as it's time for the boy to have a new chance at life. The days following the bear's release are filled with quiet moments of reflection for Miller, Eliza, and the boy. Life at their home begins to shift in ways they hadn't expected. The nursery, once a room filled with emptiness, now buzzes with life. The walls, once bare, are now adorned with drawings and toys, the small, innocent remnants of childhood joy. Eliza, who had been hesitant at first, now embraces the boy as if he's her own. She brushes his hair gently every morning, kisses him on the forehead before bed, and sings lullabies that Miller never thought he'd hear again. There is a softness to her, a tenderness that hadn't been there since their own child's passing. The pain of their loss hasn't disappeared, but it's now intertwined with a sense of hope and healing. Miller watches them, a quiet observer to the transformation. He sees Eliza's love blooming again, but he also sees something else in her eyes, something he's never seen before. The joy of being a mother again. It's something they both thought they'd never experience. The boy, now named Lucas after a suggestion from Eliza, slowly starts to come out of his shell. At first he had been quiet, reserved, uncertain of his place in the world. But as days pass, Lucas begins to smile more, to laugh, to show signs of the playful child he is meant to be. He clings to Miller with an attachment that is both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Miller knows that Lucas, too, is healing, that this new life is giving him the love and safety he never had before. They take walks together in the woods, small, quiet outings where Lucas marvels at the simple beauty of nature. They walk past the spot where Miller first encountered the bear, and Lucas stops every time, looking at the trees as if the bear might appear once more. "Do you think the bear will come back?" he asks one day, his eyes filled with wonder and a touch of sadness. Miller kneels down beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "The bear's free now," he says, his voice soft. "It's out there in the forest, where it belongs. But you know, Lucas, it's always a part of you. It protected you. It made sure you were safe. And now, we'll always be safe together." Lucas nods, his eyes thoughtful. "I think it loved me," he says quietly, his voice full of innocence. Miller smiles, though a lump forms in his throat. Yes, it did. That evening, the small family sits around the dinner table, laughter echoing through the house. Eliza prepares Lucas's favorite meal, a bowl of macaroni and cheese with extra cheese. Lucas's face lights up when the dish is placed before him, and he looks up at Eliza with wide eyes. "Thank you, Mom," he says, the words still unfamiliar on his lips but spoken with sincerity. Eliza's eyes fill with tears, but she smiles, her heart full. "You're welcome, sweetie." Miller watches the exchange, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. This child, this beautiful soul, has brought new light into their lives. They may not have given birth to him, but in every way that matters, they have become his parents. And that is a gift that no amount of pain or loss could ever take away. That night, as they tuck Lucas into bed, Eliza and Miller stand in the doorway for a moment, watching their son drift off to sleep. The room is filled with the soft glow of the nightlight, casting shadows on the walls that seem to dance with the promise of tomorrow. "Do you think we made the right decision?" Eliza whispers, her voice barely audible. Miller turns to her, his hand gently resting on her back. "I know we did," he replies, his voice steady with conviction. "We gave him the love he needed. And we gave ourselves a second chance, too." The next morning, Miller drives Lucas to school for the first time. The boy's small hand rests on the window of the car, his eyes wide with excitement as they approach the school gates. Miller pulls up to the curb and parks the car, then turns to Lucas with a smile. "Ready for your first day?" he asks. Lucas nods, his nervousness evident in the way he fidgets with his backpack. "I think so," he says, looking up at Miller. "But what if I get scared?" Miller reaches out, ruffling Lucas's hair. "It's okay to be scared, but you've got this. Just remember, no matter what, we're always right here." He taps his chest and then points to Lucas's heart. "And you'll always have a piece of us with you." Lucas smiles, though it's small and tentative, but it's a start of something new. As Lucas walks toward the school with his backpack bouncing on his back, Miller watches him go, feeling a quiet pride swell in his chest. There's no guarantee of what the future will hold, but in this moment, the family he's created feels complete. At the end of the day, when Lucas returns home, he bursts through the door with a huge grin. "I made a new friend, Dad. His name is Charlie. He said we can play soccer tomorrow." Miller laughs, his heart light with joy. "That's great, buddy. I'm proud of you." As the sun sets, the family gathers together in the living room. The world outside may be uncertain, but inside there's peace, there's love, and there's hope. The bear's journey has ended, but this family's journey is just beginning. The road ahead may be challenging, but with each other, they know they can face anything. As the camera pans over the serene forest, the screen fades from the warm light of the Miller family's home to the towering trees where the bear now roams free. The sun dips low in the sky, casting golden hues over the landscape. The bear, now a distant silhouette in the fading light, is a symbol of strength, freedom, and the wild, where it truly belongs. And as the scene fades to black, a gentle, hopeful voice fills the silence. This story is more than just a tale of survival and protection. It's a reminder of the extraordinary bonds that can form between humans and the wild, between two beings seemingly so different, yet so alike. A bond born of love, trust, and the desire to protect. The bear's courage saved a child, and that same child, with the help of a loving family, now has the chance to grow, to laugh, to live the life he deserves. The screen shifts, showing pictures of the boy, Lucas, now happily playing with friends, his face full of joy, his eyes no longer filled with fear but with excitement for the future. Miller and Eliza sit together in the background, smiling as they watch their son thrive. Remember, no act of kindness is ever too small, and sometimes the most unexpected heroes, whether they walk on 2 legs or 4, change our lives in ways we can't even imagine. They show us what true love and protection look like, and in the end, they remind us of the power of second chances. The final shot shows the family, Miller, Eliza, and Lucas, walking hand in hand down a path, the sun setting behind them, their future open and filled with endless possibilities. Let's be the heroes in someone's story. Let's choose kindness, compassion, and love, because when we open our hearts, we change the world. The words "share this story of hope and love, let's spread kindness together" appear on the screen as the video fades to black.